prophecies unfolding, rivers overflowing, in the heart this knowing.
Welcome to the Evolution Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Mark Johnston. In this episode, we invited a wonderful guest named Karen Rae Wilson to join us and talk about the idea of evolution, where the planet is today, and what we can all do to make it a better place. I was in Costa Rica with a close friend, a firefighter, who had a fall, shattered her wrist. And as a male in the world, I watched this woman hold pain like I could not imagine. At one point, she told me that she'd given birth twice naturally, and the pain was worse than that. Sometimes I think men are babies, and the women certainly carry a strength and a perseverance I fully don't understand. I invite my fellow brothers to support the women of the world, those who carry strength, wisdom, and light, and let us move towards a better place. Please enjoy the story of Karen Rae Wilson, who understands evolution personally, in community, and on a global level. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here once again at the Evolution Revolution podcast. I'm Mark Johnston, your host. And as always, our journey is to explore with very interesting, remarkable, evolved human beings where they are on their journey and what their message is to the planet. And I have the great pleasure of welcoming our inspirational singer, songwriter, mentor, Karen Rae Wilson. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Mark. I mean, it's just so lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And, it's just lovely to get a chance to connect like this and to share stories of our lives.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, you are quite a storyteller from my understanding. And I love the interesting point where we're not even quite sure how we came together as Facebook contacts, but we did.
Right, exactly. Just somehow we've been showing up in each other's Facebook feed for, it seems like a decade. And I'm so glad we're getting a chance to meet. It's the lovely synchronicity that can happen.
Absolutely.
Through social media.
A former host and great talent of ours at the production company, Candace Olson, would end every episode of Divine Design with one line, and it was, "How divine." And I think of that now as we come together to share with an audience. And so I must start, as we always do, Karen, as you know, with Karen Rae Wilson, my sister and evolved human in this world of ours. At this time in your evolution, what is your message to the world?
I think the greatest message, if I had one, that would be inspirational for others is, really once you connect with your divine blueprint, your higher blueprint, that your life begins to unveil extraordinary circumstance and has the opportunity to become a work of art. Because when we give our gifts into the world, there's this incredible response that starts to happen, and miracles really can happen.
Beautiful. That's an inspirational start to our episode, Karen. And as always, I like to journey back with our fellow human and get a sense of what brought you to that message. I think that's what's important for an audience today is how powerful a statement you've just offered us. It is words of wisdom and words of inspiration, words of hope. And how did we get there? So if I were to go back to the early years of Karen Rae Wilson, if you could share with me a bit of a thumbnail of your early beginnings on the planet, what would that be?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in the Saskatchewan farmlands. My father was a farmer. I think one of the things about growing up on the prairies was you develop this deep connection with the land. And I used to say that the gift of growing up in that somewhat stark landscape was not so much what was there, but what wasn't. You didn't have skyscrapers. You didn't have noise. You could hear the meadowlarks. You could go to the creek and have all kinds of experiences. So silence was something that became part of my inner landscape. And then out of that, music was just, I think I came out of the womb singing, really. I used to drive my family crazy. I was always singing. So, music, I always say music and poetry was my first language, and the rest came after. So,
I love this. What a gift in the world to arrive in this lifetime with such gifts, Karen. And I've sampled some of your remarkable work when you post. and it brings a peace, a kindness, a love, a light. And I want to go back to a comment you just made about growing up in the beauty of Saskatchewan, of what wasn't there, and that silence became part of your inner landscape. Can you explain more about that?
Well, I think music comes out of silence. Culturally, there were times when Saskatchewan didn't offer some of the things I might have liked, but I was fortunate that my parents believed in my music, and I used to take a whole day off school and go into to the city and study music. The landscape, the connection with the earth is a thread that runs through my life. It runs through the music I wrote, the musicals I produced, Earth Shine, Concerts for Water, the love and reverence for the earth and the desire to protect it, to be a voice for sustainability, all of these things, So that became kind of an early part of my own mission, I suppose, music and the earth. And as I, became more involved in the world, I began to realize that there was this incredible connection between me and spirit. And I would ask what I should be doing, and I would get responses, and I would follow those, and miracles started happening. But I always wanted to be around the most inspiring people that I could be with, and that I wanted my life to make a difference. I wanted my music to not so much necessarily be commercial, it could have been, but that it had a message that was relevant to the times we were in.
Beautiful. Karen, thank you for that. I always love these journeys because layer by layer you get to know somebody at a more personal level, and so does our audience. And when I hear you share your love of the land, you and I both share a deep affection for those in the First Nations, First Peoples, and those in our community that understand the concept of Grandmother Earth. Mother Nature is a broad term, sweet medicine as the animal world, the beauty and the divinity of those entities, every entity on Grandmother Earth. Boy, I wish we had more of that in the world, where that respect for First Nations comes forward, because I have learned, as I know you have, such remarkable teachings from our friends in the community. And the idea of, if we could all carry that level of wisdom, if we all could carry that level of respect, if we all could carry that level of understanding of the interconnectedness and the interdependency that we have as everything on the planet, what a better world we might have. And so a deep respect for that. Thank you. And to migrate over to music as a topic, music is a language, as you would well know, and you create magic through your language of music. You truly do. And can I just dive into that topic a bit more with you, of what happens for Karen when something comes to you, or how does the process work, if we could share for our audience?
I think that I would get an idea that I wanted to produce a show, for instance, or something. And then I would go out walking, and I would start sort of tuning in, I guess you would say. And before I know it, the characters would show up, or some of the story would start to show up, and I would just begin that experience. And I can give you one example in particular. Once I got involved with women's leadership, and was invited to sing at a conference in Washington, D.C. This is further back. And then I found out about the United Nations Conference for Women, and I decided I was going to write a theme song for the event, and that it was cross-cultural and it needed to be in many languages. So I can remember literally sitting in my living room and in thinking about this, and I started to get the chorus and the idea that it should. At that time, I was interested in African culture as well, that it came in Swahili. And so, I got the sense of what that would be like. So I think I've always had this connection, shall we say, with inspiration or divine guidance. And so I would just set an intention, and then I would kind of show up for that. And before I know it, it sort of downloads. I used to say it's not that hard to write a song. It's not that hard to write a poem. It's not even that hard to write a book. Oh, it seems a little harder writing books, and now I'm doing that. But to get yourself into the place where the song is already written, that's the key. So there's a way, where you can begin to move into that space. Rumi says, there's a field, I'll meet you there. So I've been very lucky in this lifetime. I have a pretty strong hookup to that big field. And that has, informed my life in many ways to live a life of more service oriented, I think, in terms of the direction or intention of my life path and my contributions, my mentoring of others. And I've always had a gift it's the same as the gift for music. I have a kind of a gift to see people's higher blueprint, literally. So if I'm working with an individual or I'm working with a group or I'm holding a retreat, if I just tune into their music, I used to say, I just listen to their symphony and I listen to what, instrument they're playing. And some people should be playing another instrument, metaphorically, they're playing, I don't know, the flute, and they should be playing the trumpet. So everything is music to me, including people, I suppose, in that sense. And so it's given me this tremendous ability to listen in a certain kind of way, listen to the universe for what kind of poetry and music wants to come through for me, listen to the universe for what I can write about or speak about, especially speaking now, that is relevant to the times we're in. And so it's kind of like a waterfall. Once you open that waterfall, for me, it starts to pour. Once I set the intention. You were, because you call your podcast Evolution Revolution, I love that because I've always been interested in the evolution of our own consciousness and how remarkably hooked up we really are to a bigger blueprint. It never ceases to amaze me that it's so precise for each life. Your cultural background, your ancestral background, your gifts, this starts coming together in this incredible vector point for each individual. And then if they can tune into that, if they can get a sense of that, then you're living in the life of passion because you're doing probably what you love or some degree of what you love. Yes. And there's a trajectory that goes with those gifts. Some of the elders I worked with would say, gifts relate to community and callings. Jobs relate to money, but gifts relate to community. Callings relate to community. So once you know what your gifts are and you know how they relate to community, you can go anywhere and that hookup starts. And so that's really what happened to me. I traveled to many countries. I sang and presented in so many places. But I knew my gifts. Music was one of them. Music medicine, you can call it. And it was always just a connection with the community.
Beautiful, Karen. Thank you. I often go to the place of if I were just tuning into an episode such as this, and I even partway through the episode, and I hear something from Karen Rae Wilson about the field, and I'm curious, and I don't have any exposure to that, at least that we know of as of yet. So several things. Two questions that come to mind. I'll offer the first and then the second at the same time, and please answer as you wish. That how does one approach, find, understand what this field is if we've never taken the time or had the opportunity to do that? And then secondly, how do we find our music? Those would be two curious points I have for you.
Okay. Well, I think, we want to have a direct experience of that hookup. We want to have a direct experience of our own divine nature. I could talk to you about it till you're blue in the face, but it doesn't really resonate unless you get that experience, right? Yes, so, because otherwise you're just reading a book or it's an intellectual concept. I mean, there's different ways to make that connection. Of course, meditation is really a great road inward, to sit in silence, watch the breath, whatever. To be in nature is, for some people, that's sufficient. They're out in nature and they have these epiphanies. They have these moments of, shall we say, more transcendent experience. If you got it once, it's there, Yes. And it's connected to the human heart. I mean, if there's a lot of wounding or trauma in a person's life, that can get shut down a little bit earlier. So, maybe that's one of my gifts when I'm in retreat with people, is to help take people into direct experience of this. And then once that's hooked up, that's when all that other information starts to pour. But for some people, it's through their instrument, I mean, certainly for me, when I'm singing or when I'm writing, I'm connected to that. For somebody else, it might be playing baseball or even golfing, or, they have that Satori moment where there's just them and that. There's nothing else. You're not thinking about what are people thinking about me as I put that basket in, for men especially, the basket, the ball into the basket, and for women, of course. But in that moment, you're one with that experience. There's there's nothing else, right? But the truth is, everyone has this divine connection. Without exception, there are no exceptions. So that's the good news. And it's much simpler to connect with than most people think. It's Beautiful. A simple, quiet thing. It's not a big thing. It's, I just want to say the great Sufi saints, they would always tell some kind of story about you're looking for the jewel. Where's the jewel? Is it out? Is it outside the house? Where is it? And they always start to laugh because it's in your pocket. The jewel is always right with you. It's not far away.
Inspiring. And then the second would be, how do we find our music? As I say, you say someone might be playing the flute when perhaps they should be playing the trumpet. That's a very intriguing thought. And so I'm John Doe or Jane Doe, and I'm curious, A, what is my instrument? And B, is it the right one?
Okay, well, the best question to ask is, what did you love to do as a kid? I mean, that's a big clue. And I think, it relates to your happiness quotient. If you don't have too much happiness and passion in your life, you're probably not on the right track. You might be doing things for other reasons. You might be doing it for approval, to make money, for security, all those things. But if you really dial into what you're here for, it will have its own bank account.
Wow, that is a lot to take in, and something
Like for
beautiful to
sure.
take in. Yeah.
Because when we're in the flow of life, or when life is living us, it creates such an abundance of energy. And right now, because there's so much, suffering that we're seeing and so much conflict, and this is a time of more difficult initiation, which is something I've helped people with, and have an understanding of the components of initiation. But the staying connected to the sweetness of life, this is essential. Could be something small. Get some flowers. Listen to your favorite singer, Go get out that baseball if you like to play baseball as a kid.
I love that.
So that's the thing. And also, there's a connection to people's family lineage, often with gifts.
Okay.
You'll find, oh, my grandfather was a woodworker, and I never did that. I took a big corporate job, but I like to work with wood on my, spare time. Or, my great aunt was a painter, but I never tried it. And then I started painting when I was 50. Or there is some ancestral connection to our gifts. Yeah.
Well, again, the truth and the wisdom and the beauty of the First Nations peoples, and you and I both know that they carry that understanding, and so many of us could learn from that.
Yeah.
So many things come forward. Your words are inspiring, and they are full of light. And at a time like this in our planet, we need more of this. So thank you. And I would say, you mentioned my great aunt was a painter, for example, and I didn't pick up a brush until I was in my 50s. Is the concept there that it's never too late?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And especially now, so many people in their 80s. Look at Jane Goodall. All these people doing remarkable things, because really when you get older, hopefully you've gained some wisdom. That's the gift of age. Wisdom is found, the great mystics would tell you, wisdom is found in the dark, not in the light. So wisdom comes because you've had some experiences and you've had to live through them and turn them around. And I know that you've done several interviews with people who have turned around great challenges. And we are living in a time of great challenge. I think Michael Meade calls it the time of impossible tasks. We're living in the time of impossible tasks. But because wisdom is found in the dark, you could say that this is a wisdom gathering time, because there's lots of darkness, right? In Indigenous cultures, like First Nations or many Indigenous cultures around the world, they would talk about going through an initiation.
Okay.
An initiation is spiritually is an opportunity to go to a higher level of consciousness. But it's challenging, because in a real initiation, you don't know if you're going to live or die, and everything's beyond your control. So for a lot of people right now, that sounds like what we're doing collectively, right?
Yes.
So there are many individuals like myself who've gone through initiations, who've gone through challenges, and we know what it's like to, go into the forest and come out the other side. But the story of Hansel and Gretel. They just got one pebble at a time.
Yes. Fair
Right?
enough.
They didn't get the whole, how to get out of the forest, right?
Amen.
So you just
Moment
keep
by
taking the next step. But I think the metaphor for initiation right now, in Indigenous cultures, of course, in Africa, for instance, you're a young man, we're going to take you out and initiate you into being a man, right? Maybe you're 12. Historically, the mother would kick you out of the house if you were a man. This is all kind of part of the drama of it, and you would go off with the elders, and, maybe they might scar you or cut you briefly, so that you could say, okay, life has some challenges. We're going to help you heal this. And, in more traditional culture, you might, kill some sort of animal or whatever for food, hopefully. But then when you came back, you would be transformed, and you would be recognized as someone who went through an initiation. Therefore, you you require some respect for that. So right now we have lots of people going into self-imposed initiations, but if you don't have a mentor or an elder to get you through that initiation, you could stay stuck in that for a long time. And then you would never get the wisdom that comes with that. So that's the gift in mentorship and eldership, or wisdom keepers, if you want to put it that way, is they're going to help you get through those challenges and out the other side with, wow, this is what I come with now. This is the medicine I carry now.
Beautiful. Evolution. That is evolution. I love this
That is
kind of
evolution.
thinking.
Exactly.
Amen.
I'm sure,
Amen.
in your own life, you've been through some pretty big challenges, but it's those challenges that make you who you are.
I appreciate that very much, and it resonates deeply. And in some of the beautiful ceremonies I've been exposed to in the Indigenous culture that I've explored, that moment where I think I can't, and Karen, this has happened countless times, I'm ready to pack it in. Middle of the desert, it's pitch black at night, and I'm slightly terrified, but I'm here. And the moment I think, it's whatever, you're 20 something, and I'm just going to pack things, find my car, and head back to the city. The moment I ask for help, the moment I say, I don't want to give in, I'm at a moment of struggle and challenge, and please guide me. And within not even seconds, half a second, something comes. It's not always the full answer to your point. It might be that
I know,
first
but
level.
you get to the next level, right?
You do. And look at the face, because those are moments. I have had challenges like every human, and some you wonder if you'll get through, but when you hold space for that moment of challenge, which to your great point is where evolution exists and we are uncovering it, the more we can build that wisdom and carry it for ourselves and for others in the world.
And for the younger generation,
Amen.
I mean,
Amen.
spirit answers sincerity. If you have a great longing for spiritual connection or the divine, if you want to put it that way, or your higher self, or, that longing creates those synchronicities. I mean, I'm lucky. I have master spiritual teachers. I've sat with many, many master spiritual teachers from so many different traditions and just soaked up so much of that transmission, really, of someone who is fully awakened, never not awake. Most of us have longer and longer periods as we work with our inner technology of being more awake. Okay, we can be more conscious. We don't have to just knee-jerk reaction around everything, right? But to be in that space unceasingly, wow, now that's the ultimate purpose of life, really.
I want to ask, is that an awakening? Because I understand through cultures I've explored, journeyed with, that it is. There are moments of an awake state and they drift. But as you do more of this work, the longer those periods happen. That was through the journey of oneness out of India that I first heard this
exactly.
idea.
Okay, beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's so important for us, Karen. I think especially at this time, I see a lot of your posts, which I adore, and I've commented about feminine energy in the world right now. I'm the son of a single mom and a deep respect for women. And gosh, look where our planet is today. And a big part of me always says, God, if your folk could have led things for a longer period than our gender has, if you call it, where would we be right now? So can we please, at your own inspiration, speak to the idea of feminine energy in the world and where we are right now in our evolution?
Yes, and the feminine within all of us. But, over 19 Indigenous calendars say if the world is to be saved, it will be saved through the feminine. The Navajo blanket of hope woven right into it is the story of the three corn maidens. I've sat with that blanket. I've had the privilege of being in the presence of that, shall we say, living prophecy in a way. But the world is like a great bird that will go out of balance. One world, one bird, one wing will be the masculine. One wing will be the masculine and one the feminine. And the masculine will be too strong and the world will not come back into balance until the feminine grows stronger, until the corn maidens stand up. So in this moment in time, this is the decade, this is the time for the feminine. We can see right now that unhealed masculine energy is destroying the earth and the planet. That's really clear now. I would never have said that in the past. But right in this moment, it is. And unfortunately, men haven't been allowed to feel and heal at the same level, and they haven't had as much focus on that, so they're behind. Women have been doing this work for decades, making circles, coming together, talking about their deeper feelings. And so right now, the opportunity for women to lead must be recognized.
Yes.
And it is women that will be able to have the emotional intelligence and the connection is spiritually. More women have had that deeper connection to take us through this initiation, this time of, the great turning.
The great turning.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I'm amazed, Karen, gratefully now yourself included, to be surrounded by some deeply impressive women. One of my closest new friends, who I feel like I've known forever, we were on this journey in Costa Rica, and I think you and I had the connection before our last day
Right.
before flying home. My friend Jennifer, who was in
Right.
the fire service, had a pretty bad fall on a hike at a waterfall and went down, shattered her wrist. This woman's a first responder, and
Wow.
there's a whole
Wow.
story behind what happened next. We carried her out on a backboard for 45 minutes through the rainforest, through all the rivers, and got her to help. And as a man in this lifetime, I witnessed this woman hold pain, and I swear I've said to so many of my friends, men are babies, because this woman, with the greatest respect, has given birth twice naturally, and she shared with me that the pain she was in on the flight home into
Right.
the ER was worse
Right.
than that. And I thought, obviously, I don't even have a concept of what that reference means
Right.
truly, but got through it, and not only got through it, is evolving as a human because of the experience of a deep respect. Now, another close friend is the mother of triplets. I mean, at that point,
Right.
my comment is shut the front door. I think we're done here. And these three adults are deeply impressive people. Women have a strength, women have a wisdom, women have, and Jennifer herself from the fire service in another project offered on camera that, women in the fire service bring a compassion and empathy. And yes,
Right.
sometimes our upper body strength is different, but technology and equipment is different today. And you get that balance of energy. Sometimes you might
Compassion.
not with a male. And so, to your great respect, I understand in some cultures, the council of grandmothers really is where the wisdom is held.
Absolutely.
And to some extent, the
Matriarchal.
power. Yes. So, boy, do we pray that energy lifts in the world and carries us all forward. And I do love that you referenced, because I caught it go by, we are all a blend of male and female energy, and that when we are out of balance, that is when things tend to go awry. And so the next question I would have, and I do want to speak to Grey Wolf and a couple other points,
Yeah.
and I know we have something
We're running
special
out
for
of
you at the
time.
end.
Yeah.
But,
No worries.
how do we, I guess I'll go here. What would your advice to men in the world be today at this time in our evolution?
Do your inner work, get together, do some healing. Otherwise, it's not going to be fun in the coming decades. Everything is surfacing that which is hidden. Know that there's a connection between the feminine and the earth and birth. And we're giving birth right now. If we're going to birth a new world, women have a lot of gifts to bring to that. But I think for men, find some mentors, get together, recognize how, unfortunately, you've been sold such a plethora of how you need to be, what you need to do. And also, I hate to say this, but now with pornography, all hooked into the dark side of what's happening right now.
Yes.
These are all escape routes, but there's nothing like the sacred masculine to connect. Think of the Knights of the Grail. I mean, they were here to be of service. They were here to protect the earth, to protect the land, to protect the women and children. And if you can move into that level of understanding, then you have a big role to play as a man in this next period of time.
Thank you, Karen. I take that with great respect. We'll circle towards the wrap up here with a couple of pieces. If I were to say the term, and I know it's a big question, Grey Wolf to you, what does that mean?
I at one point in my life, before I got on a more yogic path and was into Eastern teachings, I spent a lot of time with Indigenous elders. And when I was young, I was actually recognized as a young elder in the Indigenous circles. By the time I was 41, that I carried a certain understanding and wisdom in medicine. And in the course of that, I was on an elders council, and I met an Inuit medicine man named Grey Wolf, who, you could not be with Grey Wolf and not expand your cosmology. He came from a matriarchal lineage. He could make it rain. I was with him when he made it rain. He could take all of the pain out of a wound. He could heal a burn and take all the pain out. He was extremely gifted medicine person who was raised from a child by the grandmothers, to become a healer and to travel. And, we had quite an interesting and unusual connection in the sense that there was a recognition between us. And, you know, the stories that I got from him. And, you know, this was a man who suffered greatly. You can't come from an indigenous Northern culture, you know, without having suffered, and his family lineage, you know. But he used to travel with a whole eagle wing, not a feather, the wing.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a person who walked with having had a lot of suffering and was on his blueprint, was on his mission to be who he was in this world. And, you know, the white culture is so linear. I mean, when you're with indigenous cultures of many cultures, not just Native Canadians or Native Americans. I mean, we're talking all the different tribal cultures. You know, it's non-linear. They're always dreaming about something. I had a dream about you before I met you, whatever. You know, and it's the non-linear elements of these cultures that have more to offer us right now, because they're connected to the heart, to the land, to the stars.
Interconnectivity, Karen, how beautifully said. I know just even through this conversation, many people will want to know more about you. So how do people find you? I'm hooked. I want more. Where do we explore Karen Rae Wilson and your beauty in the world?
Right. Well, I'm certainly on all the major social media platforms. You just have to Google my name. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook under my own name. My website, you know, just Karen Rae with an E Wilson will get you somewhere to connect with me for sure. Facebook Messenger, Instagram, probably the easiest places to send me a private message. And, you know, my great joy is helping other people come into their power and their magic. So,
Karen, I love this. And I want to nod to my producer, Kieran McFarlane, who's off in the background and not hearing, because I realize I did this with AirPods. But boy, will you be impressed, Kieran. And he has such a gift in the post phase of our podcast to cherry pick moments and stay connected to the sweetness of life and beautiful nuggets you've offered here. So I'm delighted. But I also know something rather special came to you today. And I want to open the end of the podcast to just say, Karen, please share with us the gift of magic that came to you today.
Okay. Well, I like to write almost every day, and poetry is just like, it just comes through me. I just start a poem and it's there. So I wrote a poem this morning about women and the earth. It's called Azure Sky. Azure Sky. Women and the earth, both vast, imperceptible movements of life-giving majesty and hope. We are a symphony unfolding, a collective body of magnificent creation. Her story of beauty and magic and power has just begun. The awe of birth, the lay of the land, a flock of birds sings in every breath. She is only beginning to shape the world in her image, one that will shine like the sun and fill the universe with aching pleasure. An entire galaxy of shooting stars is not enough to fill her basket of love. A holy creation branching upwards, weaving unending threads of silken light that climb upward and fill the azure sky.
Well, enough teaching in my duty to say there's nothing more for me to say at the great reception of that gift, Karen, except thank you, Wado, merci. You are a light in the world.
Lovely to be with you.
Amen. I look forward to more. Thank you so much for it. My pleasure indeed. Everyone, Karen Rae Wilson, our latest guest on the podcast, Evolution Revolution. I thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing where you go in the journey of the world. And for everyone else, we will see you next episode. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.